let me welcome to the stage our moderator for this next segment, Ruth COPLAND, who is the creator and host of a show, It's a Question of Balance. Please help me welcome Ruth. And please help me welcome to the stage the amazing Jane Lynch.
Well, first, I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone. What an incredible film that was. Really wonderful, wasn't it? It was such a perfectly encapsulated story. I don't think you needed any more, you didn't need any less. It was just really satisfying as a piece of art. So I wanted to start with you, Carol, the writer of Writer's Block, and you've got an amazing career in comedy. You're an Emmy-nominated writer and stand-up comedian. You've written for shows such as Seinfeld, Saturday Night Live, The Ellen Show, the Academy Awards, as well as frequent appearances on late-night shows including David Letterman and Johnny Carson. You've even opened for Frank Sinatra.
Yes, I am that old.
I'm wondering, what was your first experience of comedy growing up? And then how did you get drawn into comedy as a profession?
Well, what's great about stand-up comedy, how I started, and it's still true today, is that I went to college in Binghamton, New York, and I was in a theater group with Paul Reiser. And he told me that during the summers he would go down to the city and audition at these comedy clubs for open mic night, which is still the same. And I went and watched him. He was great. And I went on at these open mic night at the comic strip, and the MC there that night was a guy named Jerry Seinfeld, who passed me on the audition, put me through, and then I went to another club called Catch Rising Star, another club that's not around anymore, but was there at the time, and the MC that night was a guy named Larry David, who put me through the audition too. So I literally go back to my first day of show business with these guys, but it's what I've always loved about stand-up. It's like, you want to be a comedian? Well, you can go on tonight at Zippy's or Uncle Funny's and be a comedian, you know? I mean, you might trip and fall and not do great, but you're doing it. And it's kind of, you know, the inspiration for something like this. What I love about living a creative life is you just never know where inspiration is going to find you. And I live in a lovely part of Los Angeles where I hear birds singing in the morning. And I've always thought, if you really stop, focus, and listen to these birds, you know, they're amazing melodies, and they're so dense and beautiful musically. And it made me think, as a writer, because I've experienced writer's block, like if you are a songwriter, there's there's a lot of room to think of, like, I could maybe take that tune that I'm hearing up in that tree and make it something great, and especially if you were stuck. So that's really what the inspiration was for it. And the great thing about when you write something like that is you hope for a great actor. And I called up Jane Lynch to have lunch. And she went to the Soho House, very fancy, nice place.
Fancy. I'm a little hot.
But, you know, as a writer, you dream of, like, to writers, Jane Lynch is just the gold standard, because she's the triple threat. You know what I mean? Yes, absolutely. Because, you know, as a writer, you hope that your material is here. You know, with the Jane Lynch being in it, she's going to take it here. Second part of the triple threat is she's musical, which I thought would be great because she's a songwriter. She's also got to be musical. And I do highly recommend her See Jane Sing show. It's fantastic. And the other thing that's great about her as an actor is that she's not crazy. And I don't know if you've heard about some other actors, but they can be a little woo-hee. You know, she's a trooper. She just such a doll and so regular and hardworking and great. So once I knew that Jane signed on, I felt like we're in a super good place.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Well, Ben, you're an award-winning director, editor, and in the case of this film, writer's block, the producer. And I always think the term producer is rather a mysterious one. It seems to embody a lot of different things. So I'm wondering how you would describe it and how you got involved with this project.
Well, I've known James for a while, since I moved to LA, and worked with him on a documentary that he made. And I feel like we work well together, and we can piece things together. And it depends on producing. I guess depends on what the day is. I might be finding a bird one day and keeping everything on the rails the next day while we shoot. So it's a cool thing. Yeah, but Carol took when he went to lunch with Carol, and they kind of.
I went to
jumped
lunch
off
with
from there, yeah.
James because I like having lunch. And
It's very Hollywood.
Soho House, though.
it wasn't the Soho House, Jane, no.
I forget where we had lunch.
We went to the place that they have the vegan pizza you like.
The Four Seasons.
Yeah, not too shabby. Four Seasons, right. But anyway, I went to him because he has produced and even directed films himself, and it was really just to kind of exploratory kind of conversation. How do you get funding? And we also connect because we're big animal people, and very big into Humane Society and Farm Sanctuary and all that. And I felt like this story, is also about animals and how they inspire us to be creative, among a million other things. So we sat down to have lunch, and I asked James about how do you get an investor, and I told him the story of it, and especially I think the animal part of it really sparked to you. And he said, "Oh, well, I'll be your investor." So that was pretty great.
Excellent, yeah.
Yeah.
What's funny about that is that she came to lunch with that, and I was coming to lunch just to have lunch, but in the back of my mind, I just did a documentary about school lunch, and it's not the most up subject, and I said to myself, the next thing I want to do is something happy and up, and a short film, and have fun with it, and not be something that's so serious. So what she says is always keep an open, like Jane says, keeping that creative mind open, because you never know what's going to happen, and if you just keep that mind open and do it, and things like this just happen. And it was just, then knowing Carol, and she's a dear friend, and knowing I love her writing, and to me it was like and then when I found out Jane wanted to be in it, and then I brought Ben on.
But James really goes to the mat, because I have to say, in thinking about this, as a songwriter, I thought, she lives in a little bungalow, kind of like, in Laurel Canyon, which is kind of an artsy, kind of Joni Mitchell-ish kind of part of LA. And we really couldn't find any place. And then one day, James said, well, why don't you use my real house? Oh. Which we did. And that was like, okay, thank you, James.
It's a shack
We'll
on
do
a hill.
that.
And what's funny is I live in a place in LA called the Bird Streets.
Right, yeah.
So it was just like synergy, like, okay, this is just, we all were just there at the same time, and the magic just happened.
And the agent's office was your basement.
It was my gym.
Your gym.
We took
yeah,
all the
yeah.
gym equipment
And
out and made it an
like
office.
it looked like an agency. It looked like ICM.
So talking about
Fancy
money,
gym.
James, there's always a tension between commerciality of a project and art. How do you approach that in the projects you become involved with?
I do it because I love it. I know, you're not going to make money in a short. It's not why you do it. It's because, you believe in a project, and I believe in Carol, and, in her writing, and, again, that Jane did it for us for peanuts was just shows you.
I don't think I was paid. Was I paid?
I paid you.
Yeah,
It's coming. The check is coming.
Oh, it's
Jane.
okay.
So the check's
It's in the
I'm
mail.
still
Yeah.
waiting for it. Yeah.
But,
Not enough.
it's just the joy of that. Life sometimes isn't fun. The world is a crazy, nutty place, and just doing something like this that was just honest and, just beautiful was the reason why I wanted to do it. Just for some, and then getting to work with them all and seeing everybody's work ethic and how beautiful it was. And, she was there from like 9 to like midnight, for 2 nights, which
And you
was
had to eat
amazing.
vegan food, too.
I was forced to eat vegan,
Vegan,
and
I
I did
know.
all right.
We got a note from her agent, she's vegan.
Yeah.
Then we said to her first thing, so we hear you're vegan, and she's like, no, I'm not. So.
Yeah. And then I ate a steak right in your
Right,
face last
right,
night.
right.
Well, that made finding a bird a real pain in the ass too, because the PETA people are, you know, coordinating the whole thing, and I report to them. And you know, there's a lot of weird places out there that deal with animals, and I think I walked out of a few, but I found what are their names? Salt and Pepper? What was it? Did anybody read it? Yeah. There's 2 of them though. We had a backup bird. And then Troy named the frog Opie, I'm sure after Ron Howard. Troy's done a lot of stuff with Arrested Development and all that. So I'm assuming that's why the frog's named Opie. I've never asked him though.
Now, Troy shot this whole thing on a, what do you call?
Segue.
A
On
Segway.
a bad idea.
That's, he shoots, I don't know anybody else who does this.
No.
But he's on that thing.
Wow.
He has the camera right here, and he's on a Segway.
He
That's
rigs
quite
up,
an image.
Yeah, he has a
amazing.
Segway, and he rigs the Steadicam onto it so you don't have to wear the vest, which allows him to just jump off of it and leave the camera. You know, you don't have to take the vest off and stuff like that. And I found it to be, it slowed us down, I think, quite a bit.
We were so impressed.
There's not a lot of running and chasing in this movie. I think it would have been fine. But he was great. Troy's done all kinds of things, and I think really brought some vision to this.
And the only time there's a Segway in my living room, so that's not happening again.
So Jane, they always say never work with animals or children. So how was it working with the bird and the frog?
It was wonderful.
Toad.
It was great. You know, it was really fun. I think we did most of the birds coverage I wasn't present for, right? I mean, there were a lot.
You were in a few shots though, but they had the thing, you know, trained to if it needed food, it was in the guy's pocket, or no, it was in his hand, and he had a little clicker in his pocket, and if the bird hears the noise, it flies off.
Yeah.
And then they put it back, and then it does it again. It was, you know,
Yeah.
better than a lot of actors. Did a pretty good job. Great blocking.
Very
Yeah,
reliable.
and the bird
yes.
wasn't crazy.
And it wasn't crazy, yeah.
Thank God.
So on a slightly more serious note, I wanted to ask you, Jane, acting's very competitive, especially in Hollywood. And I'm just wondering, particularly when you become successful, how do you keep your sense of yourself, of who you are, and not get lost in all, you know, believing your own PR? Assuming you've
Oh, I
done
do
that,
believe
of
my
course,
PR.
that, yeah.
I think that's what keeps me sane. Well, you know, I became famous when I was 50. So I had been at this without any, you know, fame or accolades or anybody, you know, having to, you know, propping me up for anything. I did it because I loved it, and I think that probably helped. I don't know what kind of a famous person I would have been when I was in my 20s, where you know, public opinion could really sway the way I felt about myself. How when I'm back in my 20s, if someone gave me a look that I interpreted as demeaning, it could destroy me for weeks. You know, so by the time I started getting famous, I was an old lady. And,
Hardly.
you're supposed to say, no, you're not, Jane. But that's
Well, that
okay.
was my English version. Hardly.
Yeah, but I'll bet there are probably 50-year-olds out there who wouldn't handle it very well. I mean, if you're not solid, you know, and standing on your own 2 feet, I think you can get a little crazy.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah, you get a little crazy, and kind of tough to deal with. And
Yeah, well done for not being. And Carol, one of my favorite lines in the film is when the agent says, I am older than you, but I can be, because I'm a man.
I love that too, yeah. Because I'm a man. Let's hear it for Andy Kindler,
Yes,
everybody.
that'd be great, yeah.
I love that guy. Yeah,
He is.
that was a terrific line.
So various comics, such as Tina Fey, have commented on the difficulty in comedy for women, both in gaining access and also belief that women can't be funny for some reason. And obviously you and Jane are clear examples of this being untrue, but I'm just wondering whether you've seen any changes in the experience of women in comedy.
Well, like in relation to the line, you know, I mean, I just turned 60 this year. Thank you.
Her skin is flawless. Just
You know, and I've been in show business for 40 years. I mean, it's like crazy how long I've been around, and I still like being around, you know, and I always feel like it's always good to just keep creating your own stuff. It's what I love about doing stand-up, and I have my whole new stand-up. I talk about being 60, and I love doing that. But even thinking of this film and reaching out to people, and will you maybe be in it? Will you maybe finance it? Will you produce it? And then you make something. It just kind of defeats all the negative energy that's out there in show business of you can't, you're too old, you know, not this enough, not that enough. So I think I wanted her to play a songwriter who's been around and who encounters difficulties. And there are agents out there who are like, yeah, your Emmy Awards are 19 this and 19, and just how you have to just get out there every day and still attack it by doing your thing and being creative. And that's the best FU to ageism and sexism and everything out there.
Yes, yeah. There's some interesting themes in writer's block, you know, about women's experience, how we communicate, inspiration. I'm wondering how, this can be any of you, but particularly Carol perhaps, how you feel comedy works as a way of communicating ideas and perspectives compared with a serious approach. Do you feel there's advantages to comedy in that respect, in getting across different themes?
You know, I think from my kind of training at Seinfeld, you know, working at, you know, with Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld, who were, you know, the motor of that show, they really taught me, and I think all the writers who came up there, of kind of really using your own life and using the inspirations around you for ideas. And I always like to talk about Seinfeld because I always like to encourage women to get into comedy writing because we're really needed. Because, you know, we have a different filter on everything. We experience life differently from men as they do from us. And things happen to us that don't happen to men. Like I know that when I was working at Seinfeld and I pitched, you know, Elaine thinks that the Korean manicurists are talking about her behind her back in Korean. I knew that only a woman would come up with that idea because that happened to me in New York all the time. You know, that kind of thing. Or, you know, Elaine thinks there are skinny mirrors at Barney's. You know, I knew that this was only a female idea because I had to explain to the men on staff what skinny mirrors are. Because men know that, men don't know this and women know what it is. So, you know, I always feel like if you use things from your real life, and I always encourage people that wanted to get into comedy writing, you know, Larry David still does, he has a little notebook with him all the time that he writes down ideas. You know, your life has so many funny things. You're always telling your friends funny stories. That's what comedy is, you know, because it's also so relatable and funny and, you know, the shared experience we have of things, that's what I love about writing comedy. You know, I thought I was the only person who thought the manicurists were talking about me behind my back in Korean, and then you do an episode like that, and people are like, oh my God, that's me.
Right,
you know?
yes.
So it's a really fun part of connecting with people.
Yes, yeah. I said at the beginning that the film feels a perfect length, and one could argue with people's diminishing attention spans that the short film is the format of the future. But I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the short film as a format.
Yeah, well, first of all, this Q&A is probably 3 times as long as the movie, and I hope we're getting a lot out of it. And there are a lot of other, you know, filmmakers here that, you know, we're in good company, and we appreciate you guys. taking the time to listen to us about our 9-minute short. But yeah, no, it's a different thing, and it's a joke. It's a perfectly told joke.
Yes.
And I don't think it can, and they've talked about this before, but it doesn't really exist as a bigger thing. I mean, it could be maybe a vignette from another movie, but it just works well in this form, and I think that's why you developed it this way as a short film, right? So.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And if we want to tell our friends about it, how can people see Writer's Block going forward?
We're working on it. I mean, I'd love to talk to some of the people that have shorts here and see what they're doing. I mean, you can dump it out on Vimeo, or you can there's other platforms for it, but there's got to be something that we can. I mean, this is Silicon Valley. You guys got to figure something out.
Wouldn't it be great if there was a channel that was just the shorts channel?
I was just going to say
they're-
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And NBC has a thing that they're doing right now. CISO is all comedy, mostly short film kind of content, and I think this could be a cool home for that. The NBC also has a short film festival, but I'm not sure what that is or how that works. But shorts are tough. But when you have somebody like Jane and Carol working on it, I think it changes the perception of short films, and them being present in the population of shorts that we all make outside of one like this. It could help build that audience and the need and allow companies to sort of take a chance on a short.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I support a short channel.
Yeah,
let's
I
go
do
for it.
think short, I always tell young people that are trying to break in the business, instead of writing a spec script, I think the best thing to do is make a short film. Because you have now a calling card, and I've been blown away by these festivals we go to. For $1,000 or whatever, people make these amazing things. They shoot it on their iPhones,
yeah.
And I really recommend that as a way to showcase whatever you have going on. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to all of you for sharing your art with us.
Thank you.
Is there anybody here from the American Improv Theater? Thank you for the flowers. It was so sweet of you. Where are you? Well, we'll be back there for a little bit. But thank you. That was very sweet. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Let's hear it again. It was a wonderful film.